Dragons Dogma 2. Bro, what the f was that?
Your wicked schemes will avail you not, watching one.
Focus your strength, Arisen!
Fair warning, cuz this craven isn't worthy of your trust.
You speak.
Now, I have finally finished Dragons Dogma 2 and let it sit with me for a little bit of time to kind of process everything the game is and has in it, so that now I can look at it with more realistic eyes, because when I first played the game, I genuinely thought I was playing the game of the year, broski. Because, well, first of all, the honeymoon phase had me thinking the game was near perfect, of course, but also because everything in the early game just filled me with awe and intrigue, and a solid no diddy on that one. The feeling when you fight your first ogre or minotaur, or even survive your first night, is nothing short of a memorable gaming experience because of the tension and the fact that the game is rather difficult at the start, with no real fast travel system and the health system being the way that it is. You're literally one big hit away from being handicapped until you rest at either a campfire or an inn. Now, while I'm not going to get too much into the story because, well, it's not really good in all honesty, nor will I really get into the microtransactions or the de novo stuff. I do want to instead focus this video on different aspects of Dragons Dogma 2 that are definite hits and some things that are missed opportunities that hold this game from being absolutely goated. So one could say it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. That was fire, bro. The gameplay in general, I think, makes Dragons Dogma an amazing game, because I do still think the game is at its core awesome, even with my dislikes, but there are some things that unfortunately hold it back from greatness, and I can't help but feel frustrated at the potential this game has, because it's right there, like literally right there, and I do hope you get what I mean with this. So subscribe if you're new, and let's get into whatever the f this game was, broski. And man, we're literally like 1 minute into the video and I'm already so mixed on my feelings, so you know this rant slash discussion is gonna be absolutely fire, so I want to get into this. Now, I feel Dragons Dogma 2 suffers from that thing that happens with more and more games these days, in how the second part, or kind of second half of the game, just feels like it falls off, if anything, and kind of feels super rushed because of reasons unknown to me, at least. As what starts off as this world filled with intrigue and danger kind of levels out once you get to Bak Batal, or the second area of the game, which is this large desert biome. Now, while in Bak Batal, or Bak Batal, I don't know how to say that word, so I'm gonna say Bak Batal, there's pretty much just more of everything here, with more points of interest, or POIs, more large enemies to fight, more classes and quests to unlock and progress. With all of this being said, I do still feel the second part of the game kind of highlights the missed opportunities that there are here. Back when I did my first impressions video on this channel, I was bombarded with comments saying that the game overall felt more like a 1.5 instead of an actual sequel that makes any sense. And now, once the credits have finally rolled, I got to see most of the things that one playthrough can really give, and that's including the so-called true ending of the game. And ultimately, I do have to somewhat agree with that statement. Now, I don't think it's as bad as what most people make it out to be, but there are some things here that genuinely left me wondering why, first of all, but also why, like, why, like, why? It's so weird. Now, I do have to say there are also a lot of things here that warrant the number 2 in the title, of course. And while I say that, I also simultaneously disagree with my own statement a little bit, because there could have been so much more as well. The enemy variety is okay good. Like, I get why people are mad at it, because if you look at it objectively, then it does unfortunately boil down to different colored lizard people, or slimes, or wolves, or even harpies. 90% of the battles in this game are against similar looking opponents, and this is a bit unfortunate because there is a big world here to explore and see. There are a lot of caves as well in this game, which all have their own loot as well as layout, but I can honestly say a handful of times I was genuinely surprised at what I came across in these caves. For example, the Medusa you find at a random cave is absolutely awesome, where you stumble on her for the first time and you're just terrified of what could happen, and once you get through that fight, you're like, holy shit, like, I hope there's more of these things. As well as the Minotaur fight, where you're at this random cave and he just launches at you through a freaking stone wall, and that is so awesome to experience in general, but they are so few and far between, unfortunately, that it leaves you wondering, like, what are these other caves for? Some of these other caves are just filled with rock lizards, and you just cut off their tail and you finish them off, and
I beg your pardon.
Finished them off. Whoa, 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 whoa. Same goes for the griffin fight, where the first time you hear the griffin gawk or scream or whatever the freaking... Bro, I don't even know what kind of sound they make, but once they dive bomb at you, it's both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. But for the 5th or 6th time it happens, it does get a bit monotonous if I'm being perfectly honest. Now the saving grace here is the combat, thankfully, because I still do think the combat is absolutely awesome. A lot of things can go right or wrong in these fights, and it keeps you on your toes constantly. And if of course the fight gets stretched out with these winged beasts, they might just up and leave the area, making the whole endeavor meaningless, which sucks if I'm being honest, because you've just spent so many healables and items in trying to take this big ass beast down. The various bandit camps, goblin camps, and groups of harpies are a blast to run through. Depending on where you come across these things in the world, it can make for some really interesting situations that can either be super funny or freaking frustrating as all hell, which I found both super nice and just annoying. The same thing I'm talking about applies to the freaking dragons in the game. They are always so freaking awesome to fight and come across because they go like they do the heartbeat thing and they talk to you, and then you go into this fight or you run away. I'm not gonna judge. Looking at the game, bro, you are forced to do, depending on which ending you choose, of course, you are forced to do literally one dragon fight, and you're helped during that dragon fight. Because if you go to the true ending side, which ultimately, yes, agreeable that there are different kinds of wyverns or drakes or whatever you want to call them, man, because I don't freaking care. They are there to be fought and freed, but other than that, in the base game, there's one, maybe maximum 2 dragons that you have to fight that are mandatory, and I'm only speaking about mandatory fights here, of course. These dragons are in the freaking title of the game, and the fact that you only fight 2 in your whole playthrough, again, yeah. This is why, like I said earlier, it does end up feeling super rushed in the second half of the game, because what looked like the game setting itself up for this absolutely awesome hunt for dragons or drakes, or again, I don't really care what you call them. Now, I can't say this enough, man. I did love Dragons Dogma 2 ultimately, but man, does it feel annoying to admit that it does unfortunately fall short in a lot of aspects. Now, if you agree or disagree with the points that I'm talking about here or have talked about so far, please do let me know in the comments down below, man. I am going absolutely insane thinking about these things, and I'm finding it very hard to find similar thinking people who both love the game but also admit that there are faults in the game, because it tends to be very split. Either you love the game and overlook all the faults, or you already know there are people who absolutely love to dog on this game for whatever reason, which I'm not gonna judge on here. But yeah, man, for the people who actually enjoyed the game, there are some faults. Now, as for actually traveling around the world via ox cart or just old school hoofing it, I did overall like the idea of fast traveling, as it's made way more difficult than in other games, and it really pushes you to explore and just move around the map, which I found to be awesome. This is not all good as well, because I already mentioned it, but a lot of the fights tend to be against the same kind of enemies. Again, conversely, I do say that it's an issue, but also I just wanted to experience more fights at times, so I just overlook those parts more often than not. Enemy placement also doesn't really change, and it's not long before you get the layout of the land, and I would be lying if I said that I stopped and fought every freaking fight that there is to fight, because sometimes I just ran through them, man. I don't want to stay there and fight every single time, and I gotta be very honest with that, man. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. Now, hopefully with all this rambling I'm doing, you get to see why I'm so freaking frustrated at this game, man, because on one hand, I am absolutely loving every time I launch the game and just sit there and experience everything there is to do and see in this world, but at the same time, I'm so frustrated at what could have been if they had just done a few things differently. I loved the shit out of the hardcore elements in this game, like not being able to roll, first of all, but also being knocked over more often than not, and on top of that, weight management, health and stamina management, and even environmental placement management, if that's even a word, makes you really stay on your toes, as you don't really want to fall off a cliff or have your back up against the wall, or even be too far away from your pawns, which really can save you in a pinch. Now, speaking of pawns, pawn system in this game, absolutely goated. This is one of the best parts of this game by far, and it's super nice to see, hear, and recruit all the custom different pawns
You're gonna live with me now.
that there are in this unique world, and they all have their uses because you can almost always find exactly what you need at any given time. Now, item degradation, degradation? I think that's degradation. I'm not really sure about that word, but I'm gonna throw it in there just to seem like I know fancy words as well. But item degradation and even item value based on what part of the world you're in all makes for, man, intricate details in a game that you really are hard pressed to find anywhere else in other games. Like, which other game you find has you find a
That you had.
stone, a onyx, I think it's called an onyx, and depending on if you're in Bakbatal or in the other region of the world, they go for more value there because they're more sought after in the other world, and vice versa with some other items. Man, that is making the world like a livable, breathable thing, which is absolutely awesome. I really do have to stop saying the word awesome, in all honesty. I just keep repeating that because yeah, ultimately I like this game. Now, even though I love this game to absolute bits, it is unfortunately bogged down by some things that you thought or hoped would have been handled better. Another example is the class system in the game, man. There is some options in class and gear selection. I would have also hoped for more options later in the game, and the fact that you can only have 3 abilities to use really freaking cock blocks the game, broski. Like, why not have a second set of abilities from the press of a button? Because there are a bunch of abilities to unlock and they all are cool to use and have their utility per class, but you again only have to choose the top 3. Now, this problem isn't a big problem. You can overlook that if you want to, but for example, the Wayfarer class that you unlock later on in the game, you can mix 2 classes together, which is absolutely awesome. But one of the 3 abilities that you have to slot in is changing the class to the other one, which essentially boils down to 1 ability per class. On paper, yes, you can do 2 abilities per 1 class, or you know, whatever you want to do, whatever mix you want to do. But if you want to switch classes, you have to have 1 ability slot taken for switching classes, which is so frustrating. Like, have such an awesome class idea in the game, which was in the original game. You had mixed classes, which here again you have magic archer as well, which is a mix, but that's a whole different thing, man. That's OP as fuck. But man, like, this just highlights the frustration that I have with this game. Glossing over all of these things that I've just mentioned, performance is thankfully way better than it was when the game first released, but there are some hiccups here and there, admittedly. Now, with all this that I have said so far, it does essentially boil down to the big question I like to ask on this channel, and that's, is the game fun and worthwhile to play and sink your ever so omnivorously dull teeth into? Now, as per lovely usual, I rate games on a 3-tier list system of day 1 buys, maybe waits, or only for fans, or only fans, pun intended. This game, I would have absolutely loved to say day 1 buy, broski, and after my first impressions video, I would have said day 1 buy, of course, but there is some definite fine print here to be said when you're buying this game at full price for people to read, of course, because there are some things you gotta be wary of. So I will say it's a maybe wait for the time being, of course, because most of the time this game can be found on sale, at least on GG Deals, please sponsor me, which thankfully is good. It's a good thing because more and more people should actually play this game because it's awesome at its core. But again, there are issues at the price that you might get it at on sale. Man, this is a no-brainer at that price. Maybe not full price, but at half price, absolute no-brainer, broski, because it is awesome. Now, I know this game will most likely go the Dark Arisen path ultimately and release a huge expansion, which will inevitably fix and add a bunch of fan-requested features in the game, which it will benefit from in the long run. But I do get why the bridge has been burnt for some gamers out there who loved the first one and were eagerly waiting for a true sequel. Now, me personally, I am willing to look past the issues in this game and still have Dragons Dogma 2 as one of my favorites of this year, but I would be lying if I didn't agree on the fact that this game is more of a 1.5 than a true sequel ultimately, as it just gives you more of the same original Dragons Dogma, and that's not such a bad thing at the end of the day for some people, but for others, yeah man, I mean, you can read comments and you can read Reddit posts all you want because you can clearly tell some people really dislike this game, like I mentioned earlier. But should you play this game? Bro, how the fuck should I know, man? Ultimately, I'm just a guy on the internet telling you what I think of a game and if I liked it and if other people should be playing it. But now it's your turn to tell me your opinion, broski. Let me know what you think of Dragons Dogma 2, man. I'm very eager to speak with people who kind of had the same thought of really liking the game, but ultimately feeling maybe a bit let down by the potential of this game. If that makes any sense at all. Any and all comments, man, would take this video a long way. And awesome, man. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you made it this far into the video, subscribe to the channel, man. You're helping me out and you're helping yourself out, as I am the #1 casual hardcore RPG fan. I don't really know how to end this video, so here's a meme that I think of in the outro. But man, if you want to see some more videos, click this link right here or this link right here. And in the awesome words that were bestowed upon me by Knock Doubt, a good subscriber, man, keep on trucking my broski. I'll catch you guys in the next upload. Peace.